my previous video, I spoke about my own high school experiences without uniforms and without a dress code. I'm a strong supporter of self-expression and the influence it has on adolescents building their identities. Shannon and I both share a very similar stance, while Whitney provides a new perspective as a former uniform participant. Whitney made the point that through several studies, there's positive evidence supporting the usage of uniforms and that it increases attendance and betters the overall learning environment. Children choose or even apply for private schooling, where they understand the expectations of a uniform, while in public schooling, sometimes it's people's only option. The issue with enforcing that blanket statement, public schools should promote or require school uniforms, is that it doesn't acknowledge demographical diversity. Shannon mentions in her video that uniforms frequently adopted by low-income schools in big cities like Chicago become a marker for socioeconomic division. A uniform represents a child who has come from a low-income family in a high-crime area. This in itself creates a negative stigma about inner-city schools, causing self-esteem to drop and children to fail to thrive. For many students in low-income areas, it is not necessarily the cost of the uniforms itself that is prohibited, but the lack of an area to clean it in. As food deserts gain more and more attention in the media, it is important to note that there is a drought of laundromats as well. Low-income families tend to only be able to afford 1 or 2 uniforms, so when they get dirty, students have to either choose between going to school in dirty uniforms and possibly getting bullied, or just not going to school at all. The Whirlpool Company has reached out to several schools in the St. Louis area and equipped them with public washers and dryers. According to Principal Lisa Thompson in a Channel 5 KDSK news interview, clean clothes and increased attendance weren't the only positives to come out of new washers and dryers. Parent involvement is at an all-time high. When equipped with the right tools, a poor community can benefit from uniforms. However, a lot of time these needs are overlooked, making the uniforms unreliable in their success. As Shannon mentioned, it is also really important to address the stigma uniforms cause rather than enforcing them blindly. In areas of high gang and gang color activity, uniforms may be an essential part of a student's safety. However, in other areas, they may just be an economic hindrance. To parallel Shannon's experiences, where I grew up, uniforms actually tend to indicate the other end of the spectrum. They mark upper-class private school attendees that tend to come from very wealthy families. Students are subject to being labeled as ignorant or snobbish, or face stereotypes of being sheltered or extremely restricted. Private school girls are seen as easy targets at parties, posing a greater risk for their safety. So the stigma may not seem as negative, but it can be just as damaging as its counterpart. While uniforms do have benefits such as increasing attendance and decreasing distractions, it is hard for me to support them universally, because not only do uniforms become part of the individual, they become part of a bigger stereotype and thus the stigma. Uniforms are often promoted as a great equalizer. However, in reality, when used on a large scale, they tend to actually deepen the already existing demographic and socioeconomic divides.